Let's take you to Iraq now, where it appears that some pretty furious efforts are underway in and around Baghdad to strengthen the city's defences, with Islamist fighters who've swept through much of the north and west of the country, now said to be less than 70 miles away from the capital. The militant group ISIS, an al-Qaeda offshoot made up of Sunni Muslim fighters, have seized large parts of the north of the country in recent days, now said to be heading southwards. Aid agencies are warning of a major humanitarian crisis, with around 500,000 refugees fleeing the advance. Sam's got more details now at the screen, Sam.
Well, let's start with taking a look at just how much territory has fallen to ISIS in the last 48 hours. This main shaded area has been a territory that they've been conquering on and off, both in Syria and in Iraq over the last 6 months. They took Fallujah 6 months ago. Then they switched north up into Nineveh province with a very spectacular sudden military move against Mosul. But they haven't stopped there. If we take a closer look at where they've gone in the last 24 hours, they've been aiming to try and conquer this oil-rich area around Kirkuk and Hawija. Now, this is fighting picture from yesterday on the road to Kirkuk. And what is very telling about this is the limited number of Iraqi forces who are actually involved. Now, we're hearing from today that indeed that the Kurdish Peshmerga have taken over Kirkuk because the Iraqi armed forces have given up and run away. Now, they have done so because of a continuing assault further south down the main road towards Baghdad. Already Tikrit has fallen, but they have been blocked at Samarra. That is where the bit of steel has come into the Iraqi war effort, and the reason for that is, of course, that it controls the approach to Baghdad. But Baghdad is not going to be a walkover. If we have a closer look there too, what we're going to find is a concentration of Shia, sworn enemies of the Sunni Islamist extremists in Sadr city. That is a vast area, close to 1 million people, very strong indeed Shia militants there. And of course, you've got the green zone down here, the government headquarters, and surrounding the whole city is a very substantial amount of military. It's very unlikely that they'll collapse under pressure from ISIS. But the real issue is whether ISIS now entrench themselves and declare a Sunni caliphate.
شمروا عن ساعد الجد ولا تتنازلوا عن شبر حررتموه ولا يطأه الروافض ثانية إلا على أجسادكم وأشلائكم وازحفوا إلى بغداد الرشيد بغداد الخلافة فلنا فيها تصفية حساب صبحوهم على أسوارها لا تدعوهم يلتقطوا الأنفاس وكونوا على يقين بنصر الله ما اتقيتموه فإن الروافض أمة مخذولة حاشا لله أن ينصرهم عليكم وهم مشركون عبدة البشر والحجر ماذا فعلت بقومك يا أحيمق وما أحمق منك إلا من رضي بك رئيسا وقائدا تبقى بائع ملابس داخلية ما لك وللسياسة والقيادة العسكرية لقد أضعت على قومك فرصة تاريخية في السيطرة على العراق ولتلعنك الروافض ما بقيت لهم باقية حقا إن بيننا تصفية للحساب صدقت وأنت الكذوب حساب ثقيل طويل ولكن تصفية الحساب لن يكون في سامراء أو بغداد وإنما في كربلاء المنجسة والنجف الأشرك.
We're joined now by Iraq expert at the London School of Economics and Columbia University, Ranj Alaaldin, and defence editor at the Daily Telegraph, that's Coughlin. Gentlemen, a very good morning to both of you. Ranj, if we can start with you, is Baghdad really in some jeopardy?
I think it's too early to make that judgment. Baghdad is an entirely different game compared to Mosul and the Sunni Arab north. ISIS at the moment, I think, will try and entrench their position. They may try and build on the momentum they have and go for Baghdad, but I think that would be a very gross miscalculation on their part, because as your colleague just pointed out, they would face much stiffer opposition there. The Iraqi state is much more organized, more respected, it has local support, and of course there are vast numbers of Shia militias there ready to take on ISIS should they embark upon Baghdad.
Coughlin, I suppose military logic would suggest that this would be the time to consolidate gains for ISIS, but these are not necessarily commanders who work by the normal rules.
No, I mean, I think we've all been surprised at just of basically how ISIS has developed into a military outfit. But you know, they don't have proper training. There are a hodgepodge of people that have come together. They're battle hardened from their experiences in Syria. But I think in terms of having a proper, what we would recognise as a command and control structure, I think that's probably not one of their strengths. And if they see an opportunity, they're going to move very quickly, because this is an opportunist movement. They will spot a weakness somewhere and they will move in, and then they will be looking for the next place that is a potential target.
Ranj Alaaldin, as a sovereign entity, Iraq is history now. It doesn't really meaningfully exist anymore.
I don't think we're at that stage just yet. What we haven't seen yet is a response from the Iraqi state. It's all happened very quickly, and as Coughlin just pointed out, it's a opportunistic move on the part of ISIS. I think everybody was quite surprised at how little resistance they faced in Mosul. I think we could make that judgment once we see how the Iraqi state responds. And then we can actually measure what kind of influence the Iraqi state, the Iraqi army actually has in the Sunni Arab north. I mean, I foresee that they will hit back at some point. They ought to hit back hard and fast, lest ISIS really do entrench themselves and, as you say, establish a Sunni autonomous region or a caliphate.
Coughlin, on the caliphate question, I mean, there's a danger sometimes when TV covers an invasion that you end up inadvertently sort of lionising the invaders. But these are people who are quite happy to behead and crucify pretty much at will. But they are looking to establish a caliphate. There's an argument, I suppose, that runs, let them do it. Let's then judge how they get on. Because at some stage there's going to be some sort of caliphate somewhere in this region, and history will need to test it.
Well, I'm not sure it's necessarily true that there will be a caliphate in the region, but it's certainly true that this particular movement, which is an offshoot of the Al-Qaeda terrorist organisation, does aspire to create an Islamist state. And the reason we shouldn't let this happen is because of the threat it would pose to our allies in the region. We've fought several wars in the past to protect countries like Kuwait. We had to get rid of Saddam Hussein just over a decade ago, and we'll find ourselves involved in yet another military intervention if we allow a very hardline anti-Western Islamist state to take shape in the Middle East.
Just reading here, actually, according to the Agence France Presse, that the Iraqi parliament has failed to reach quorum for an emergency session. That's been sourced to officials. I mean, if that's true, then it indicates perhaps that the centre is not holding in Baghdad. Coughlin, your thoughts on that?
Well, of course, the fundamental reason this is all happening is that the government of Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has completely failed over the course of the last 5 years or so to heal the very deep rifts in Iraq. And when the Americans were in Baghdad, they were always pressing him to reconcile the Sunnis, the Kurds, address the constitutional imbalances in Iraq, but he spent more time cozying up to the Iranians, and as a consequence, a lot of Iraqis feel very disenfranchised and alienated from the Maliki government. So it doesn't surprise me at all that he can't get a body of people in the political sphere to agree on a strategy to deal with ISIS.
Ranj Alaaldin, it used to be said, didn't it, if you broke it, you own it. It became a cliche in America, didn't it? But in a sense, whether this is happening because the Americans withdrew all their troops a couple of years ago under the Obama administration, it doesn't matter. What matters is what's happening right now on the ground.
That's right. I think the American involvement, or the American dimension, tends to get exaggerated in terms of how much influence they might have at this point in Iraq. And at the same time, people also forget that the Americans also struggled to contain ISIS when they were in Iraq. They never really defeated militant groups like ISIS, like Al-Qaeda in Iraq. They only really managed to contain them. At this point, what the Americans can do, I mean, they've been requested to provide the Iraqis with airstrikes. I think that could go a long way in terms of giving ISIS a bloody nose in the interim, in the short term. But in the long term, this has to be there has to be an Iraqi solution for what is an Iraqi problem. And as Con pointed out, this is a reflection of the political crisis itself.
Ranj Alaaldin and Con Coughlin, thanks both very much indeed.